Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni viewer, and I've got one last thing to say about this recently announced Godzilla anime project, at least for now. Because while the major impression I'm getting is that most people are truly exasperated with how this is the next big announcement, I did see one recent comment in that last video which made an argument I was actually wondering if someone was going to bring up. The idea that the reason they're moving forward with this as their next big project is because Toho is trying to bring in new Godzilla fans. That is to say, they've already got the existing fan base, but they want to get in on another fan base and draw people from there in. So they're looking at the shonen action otaku crowd and they're thinking, that's a really popular place. That place makes a lot of money. We'd like a slice of that pie. Hence why they're designing this particular anime the way they are, where it's humans with kaiju powers as opposed to a kaiju story. Indeed, this sounds like it's pretty par for the course when it comes to shonen action, because the way it's described and the way it looks even sounds like it is going to be in the vein of My Hero Academia or Naruto or Dragon Ball or any number of those kinds of series that basically all follow that very similar formula. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that formula is objectively bad or anything. It's obviously stuck around for a reason. What I'm saying is that I don't really think it applies to Godzilla. And this particular argument about how it's supposed to bring in a new cadre of fans, well, I don't think it's going to work. I'll be blunt about that. You see, the thing is, I have no doubt that's what Toho is doing. They are looking to get people from other fandoms to come in and support the Godzilla fandom, the Godzilla brand, I should say. So they're making this series and they are calling it Godzilla with the hopes of drawing those people in. Now, I have addressed this in the past, but I guess it bears repeating. That is a stupid strategy. Let me put it this way. Suppose I wanted to convince a vegan to start eating meat. Let's just say I set myself up that challenge. So in order to do that, I whipped up an all-vegetable salad, put it in front of the vegan, and said, here's a steak, enjoy it. Do you think that's going to work? Of course it's not going to work because I made them a salad. I didn't make them meat, and they're not trying meat. And they're not likely to go from eating a traditional salad to eating a bacon cheeseburger. That's the line of thinking that Toho is basically doing here. They are greenlighting a series that well, at the very least at this point, it sounds like it's got absolutely nothing to do with Godzilla, just beyond the most superficial of details, but they're still calling it Godzilla, hoping that this will somehow bring in new fans. Why is that doomed to failure? Well, here's the best case scenario that they could possibly hope for. Let's suppose for a moment that the series is in fact watchable and it draws a huge crowd of shonen action fans that rave about it and support it and are just so enthused about it. Well, eventually this series is going to end, whenever that might be. And when it ends, Toho is going to look at that crowd of people and say, welcome to the Godzilla fandom. Here's the other 99% of the franchise that in no way resembles the series that you first watched that brought you in here. Where would you like to go next? Now again, best case scenario, you get a handful of that crowd, like a tiny little cadre of it that thinks, well, tokusatsu isn't generally what we're into, but hey, we're up to trying new things, so sure, we'll check it out. Whereas the majority that comprises the rest of that fandom will go, this was a blatant bait and switch. We have no interest in rubber lizards. This show is over, so we're taking our business elsewhere. Again, that is the best case scenario, but it's not even necessarily the most likely scenario. The more likely scenario, which is also the worst case scenario, is something we've already seen happen. Remember the Godzilla Polygon trilogy? Yeah, I know, nobody wants to, but you gotta remember it for a moment, because those movies, if I remember correctly, were specifically designed to draw in a new base of fans. In fact, I seem to recall some people saying that it was designed specifically to appeal to a female audience. Well, whoever it was made for, it didn't work, because nobody bothered with those things. Well, that's incorrect. The fandom that was supposed to be drawn in by these movies never showed up. The only people who did show up were the existing Godzilla fans, and we weren't happy with the results. So you'd think Toho would have learned their lesson, right? Heck, that 3-part train wreck isn't even the only example we can point to. Think about all the different Western franchises that have tried appealing to new audiences at the expense of the existing audience and ultimately wound up being for nobody. It's pattern recognition at this point, so while there is a margin for error, and I admit I could be wrong about any number of things, just based on what we've already seen, I do not think Toho is on the right path with this decision. Look, here's the bottom line. If somebody is in charge of telling a new story within an existing franchise that's got a large fan base, by all means, try something new, but under no circumstances should you ever lose sight of what already works. And you can't expect to bring in new people by abandoning everything that drew people in to begin with. That's, again, we've got plenty of examples as to how that doesn't work. And, as I mentioned the last time, we've got plenty of examples of different kaiju anime and manga that do work, because while they did try new things in branching out into these different mediums, they didn't lose sight of why the kaiju fandom exists in the first place. They maintained what works, and they simply shifted it into a different medium and showed people who are fans of that medium, look, here is a kaiju anime, here is a kaiju manga. This is what the genre is generally like, but we've spiced it up a little to fit this new format. Again, we've seen it happen. And even if not all of those series have necessarily been successful, those who still experience them certainly respect those series. In fact, one of those titles is a Godzilla manga, Godzilla Galaxy Odyssey. I'm willing to bet that if Toho had announced they were adapting Godzilla Galaxy Odyssey instead of doing this thing, the conversation amongst the Godzilla fandom would be very different right now, but that's not what they did. Instead, they're doing the old practice of peeling the label off of one thing and slapping it on something that it has no resemblance to and saying, this is the thing now, come and get it. You know, it's their gamble, ultimately. They're the ones that are putting things on the line, so ultimately they're the ones who would better hope that it pays off. I don't think it's going to. I think they're more likely to find success with Godzilla Minus Zero and Godzilla Kong Supernova, assuming that doesn't get stuck on Netflix like everything else with Warner Brothers is destined to be. But regardless, I think they'll find success with those things. I don't think they're going to find the success they're looking for with this new anime. Even if they manage to find a little bit of short-term success, it will not be long-term success. But again, it's their gamble, not mine. I'm just looking at what's happened before and wondering why they keep insisting on placing all their chips on the same square when they have consistently lost doing so before. We'll see. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off.